I married a trans man to escape my homophobic family, but now he's sleeping in my bed, and I think we're both catching feelings. I come from the kind of wealthy Asian family where being gay isn't just disappointing, it's a betrayal of generations. My father's favorite joke was calling me the F slur at every dinner. Last year, they trapped me in a room with my father's business partner's daughter. The person across from me looked miserable. Then he leaned forward. Listen, I'm a trans man. Our parents think this could work because I haven't had bottom surgery. But I'm a man, and you don't want this. Actually, I'm gay. He burst out laughing. We're literally the worst match in their eyes, but they think we're perfect. We became friends, texted constantly. 6 months later, both families threatened to cut us off if we didn't marry. So we made a deal. Fake marriage, real benefits. He'd get grad school paid for and freedom. I'd get my parents off my back. The June wedding was small. Our families were ecstatic. My father actually cried, saying I'd finally become a real man. Leo moved into my guest bedroom in August. Clear boundaries, just roommates who happened to be legally married. I gave him permission to cut his hair and dress masculine. In our culture, once a husband approves, the wife's family can't object. Twisted, but it protected him. For months, it worked perfectly. He went to school, I worked, we lived separate lives. Then December happened. Started small, watching TV together instead of separately, eating dinner together. By January, he was buying me little gifts, my favorite coffee, books, a cactus, because I mentioned killing every plant except cacti. February brought the touching, sitting closer on the couch, his leg against mine during movies, falling asleep on my shoulder. Last month, everything shifted. I came home to find him in my bed. Heater's broken, he said, not meeting my eyes. The heater was fine. I checked, but I didn't say anything. He never moved back out. Now he sprawls across me while reading, sits in my lap during breakfast, nuzzles into my neck when I say something adorable, traces patterns on my chest in bed, makes jokes about being basically a real couple, and might as well make it official. But they're jokes, right? Twice we've almost kissed. Both times he initiated, leaning in while cuddled up, eyes half closed. Both times he pulled back, turned red, made jokes about practicing for real boyfriends. The thing is, I have the emotional range of a brick wall. When he gets close, I freeze, not because I don't want it, but because I want it too much. When he calls me big and strong and safe, I don't know how to respond without revealing I'd give him anything. I've fallen completely in love with my fake husband, and I think he might love me too, but we're both terrified to admit this isn't fake anymore. Last night changed everything. His parents called during dinner. His mother screamed through the phone about photos. Leo with short hair, men's clothes, looking happy. She demanded he come home for a family intervention. You can't, I said without thinking. You're mine. The words hung there. Leo stared at me, phone pressed to his ear. What did you just say? He whispered. You're mine. You're not going back there. Ever. He hung up, walked over, stopped inches from me. Did you mean that? That I'm yours? I couldn't speak, just nodded. He reached up, hand trembling, touched my face. Because I need to know if this is real, or if we're still pretending. Because I can't. Both our phones exploded. His family. My family. Everyone calling about corrupting their daughter. We need to talk, Leo said, silencing the phones. About what this is. What we are. Tomorrow, I said, though every cell wanted to pull him close and show him exactly what we were. After we deal with our families. He nodded, but didn't move away. We stood there, breathing the same air, knowing tomorrow would change everything. This morning, empty bed, a note. Gone to campus early. We'll talk tonight. L. But it's noon now, and Leo's best friend just texted. Is everything okay? Leo asked me to pick him up from the airport. The airport. His parents must have. I'm in my car now, speeding toward the airport, praying I'm not too late to tell him the truth. This was never fake for me. Traffic is terrible, and I'm cutting people off left and right, my hands locked on the wheel so tight my fingers are going numb. Kai's text said 20 minutes and that was 5 minutes ago, which means I have maybe 15 minutes tops before Leo gets on a plane back to parents who will break him down until there's nothing left of the person he's become. I slam on my brakes at a red light and immediately gun it when it turns green, weaving between a bus and a taxi. My phone buzzes again in the cup holder, but I don't look, can't look, because if I take my eyes off the road for even a second, I might miss my chance. The airport exit sign appears and I jerk the wheel right, cutting across 2 lanes. Someone honks. I don't care. I screech into short-term parking and abandon my car in the first spot I see, not even checking if it's legal. The keys stay in my pocket as I sprint toward the terminal entrance, my dress shoes slapping against concrete. Inside, it's chaos. People everywhere with their rolling suitcases and crying kids, and I'm pushing past all of them, scanning faces in the crowd. My phone won't stop buzzing and I yank it out to silence it, catching a glimpse of my father's name over and over in the notifications. Meeting, business, disrespectful. I shove the phone back in my pocket without reading any of it and keep running. The international gates are on the far side of the terminal, and my lungs are burning, but I don't slow down. A family with a stroller blocks my path, and I dodge around them, muttering an apology. Gate numbers fly past. 32, 38, 41. I'm getting close. Gate 47 comes into view, and I spot Kai immediately, standing near the seating area with his phone in his hand. I grab his shoulder from behind, and he jumps, spinning around with wide eyes. He takes one look at my face, sweaty and desperate and probably wild-looking, and his expression shifts to understanding. He points toward the bathroom area without me having to say anything. His mouth moves, and I catch something about 10 minutes and not coming out. I nod and thank him, already moving in that direction. My heart is doing this thing where it feels like it's trying to break through my ribs. People are staring at me, this guy in business clothes running through the airport like something's on fire, but I don't care about any of them. The bathroom sign appears ahead, and I push through the door. Leo is standing at the sink, staring at his reflection, and his eyes are red and swollen like he's been crying for a while. His carry-on bag sits at his feet, packed and ready. He sees me in the mirror, and his whole body goes rigid, his face draining of color. We both freeze. Neither of us moves. It feels like an hour passes, but it's probably only a few seconds, both of us just staring at each other in the mirror. Then the automatic hand dryer kicks on somewhere behind me, loud and jarring, and it breaks whatever spell we were under. Leo turns around to face me, and he wraps his arms around himself like he's physically trying to hold his body together. His hands are shaking. I can see them trembling where they grip his elbows. The words come out rough and desperate, nothing like how I planned them in the car. I tell him he can't get on that plane. Leo shakes his head, and his voice is small when he says his parents already bought the ticket. They're waiting for him at the other end. I take a step closer, and the distance between us shrinks. I tell him I meant what I said last night, every single word, and I'm sorry it took me so long to say it out loud. His face crumples and tears start sliding down his cheeks. He asks why I'm here, what I want from him, and the question hits me like a punch, because I realize he genuinely has no idea. He doesn't know that I'm in love with him. He thinks this is still about the arrangement, about keeping up appearances, about anything except the truth. His hands are still shaking, and he won't look directly at me. I close the distance between us in 2 steps and cup his face in my hands, making him look at me. His skin is wet from tears and warm under my palms. I look directly into his eyes and tell him I love him, not as a friend, not as a roommate, not as part of our deal. I'm in love with him, and I have been for months. This stopped being fake for me so long ago I can't even remember when it was real pretending. Leo makes this broken sound in his throat, and then he's kissing me, really kissing me. Not the almost kisses we've had before where we pulled back at the last second. This is desperate and messy, and his hands are fisted in my shirt, and I can taste salt from his tears. My hands slide into his hair, and I kiss him back like I've wanted to for months. Someone clears their throat loudly, and we break apart. An older man is washing his hands at the sink, trying very hard not to look at us. Leo laughs through his tears, the sound shaky and relieved, and says, "We should probably take this somewhere else." We grab his bag, and I take his hand in mine, lacing our fingers together. Walking out of that bathroom feels like walking into a completely different life. Kai is still waiting near the gate, and when he sees us, sees our joined hands and Leo's tear-stained face and my probably stupid grin, the biggest smile breaks across his face. Leo tells him he's not going. He's staying here. Kai hugs Leo so hard he lifts him off the ground for a second. He says it's about damn time, and I can hear the relief in his voice. I pull out Leo's phone and text his parents from it, keeping the message short. He's not coming. Stop contacting him. Then I turn the phone off completely before they can respond. Leo watches me do it and squeezes my hand tighter. We thank Kai and head toward the exit. My car is probably going to have a ticket on it by now, but I don't care. On the drive home, Leo sits in the passenger seat with his hand in mine on the center console. We don't talk much because everything important has already been said in that airport bathroom. The silence is comfortable instead of tense like it's been for months. He asks what happens now with our families, and I tell him honestly that I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. He nods, and his grip on my hand gets tighter, like he's afraid I'll disappear if he lets go. I glance over at him at a red light, and he's looking out the window with this small smile on his face. I feel this weight lift off my chest, this thing I didn't even realize I'd been carrying around for the past 6 months. It's like I can finally breathe properly. The light turns green, and I drive us home, our hands still linked between us. We get back to the apartment, and Leo heads straight for my bedroom, not the guest room where he's supposedly been sleeping. He drops his carry-on the floor and starts unpacking it into my dresser, into the drawers I cleared out for him weeks ago but never acknowledged. I watch from the doorway as he puts his clothes away, claiming space like he's been wanting to do for months. He looks up at me with this shy smile and says, if we're doing this for real, he's not sleeping in a separate room anymore. I cross the room and pull him onto the bed with me. We spend the rest of the afternoon just holding each other and talking about everything we've been too scared to say. He tells me about the first time he realized this was more than fake for him. I tell him about lying awake at night after he moved into my bed, trying not to think about how right it felt. We talk until our voices are hoarse, and the sun starts setting outside the window. My phone starts blowing up around dinner time, and I watch the screen light up over and over on the nightstand. My father calling repeatedly, then my mother, then texts from my uncle and aunt. Leo's phone is still off, but I can see the notification count climbing when I glance at it next to mine. The numbers just keep going up. We order food delivery and eat in bed, sitting cross-legged facing each other with the containers between us. We're ignoring the outside world for a few more hours, knowing tomorrow we'll have to face the consequences, but tonight is just ours. Leo steals a bite from my container and grins when I protest. I steal one from his in revenge. We're both smiling like idiots, and I can't remember the last time I felt this light, this free, this completely sure about anything in my life. I wake up the next morning with Leo still in my arms, and for about 5 seconds everything feels perfect, before I remember all the missed calls from last night. My phone sits on the nightstand glowing with notifications, and I know I can't put it off anymore. I reach over carefully, trying not to wake Leo, but he stirs anyway, and looks at me with sleepy eyes. I tell him I need to check my voicemails, and he sits up next to me, his face going serious. I put the phone on speaker so we can both hear and hit play on the first message from my father. His voice comes through angry, demanding to know where I am and why I missed our morning meeting. The second message is louder, saying I'm being disrespectful and childish. By the fifth message, his tone shifts to something colder and more controlled, which is somehow worse than the yelling. The messages keep getting more harsh until I reach the last one, and my father's voice is completely flat when he speaks. He informs me that effective immediately, I'm removed from the family business, and my access to the trust fund is frozen until I come to my senses and end this ridiculous situation. Leo's face goes pale next to me, and when the voicemail ends, he says quietly that this is exactly what he was afraid of, that loving him would cost me everything. I can see him pulling into himself, making himself smaller, and I know he's already blaming himself for my father's actions. He starts to say something about how maybe we should reconsider, but I cut him off before he can finish that thought. I turn to face him fully and take his hands in mine and tell him he's not a cost. He's the only thing I actually want, and my father can keep his money and his business. Leo tries to argue that I'm being impulsive, that I haven't thought this through, but I stop him again. I tell him I've thought about nothing else for months, that I've been miserable pretending to be someone I'm not, and I'm done living my life according to my father's script. He searches my face like he's looking for any sign that I don't mean it, but I hold his gaze steady until he finally nods. We spend the rest of the day making practical plans, because feelings don't pay rent, and we need to figure out our actual situation. I log into our joint checking account on my laptop, while Leo pulls up a spreadsheet on his phone. We go through our finances line by line, and realize we have enough saved to cover rent and basic expenses for about 3 months if we're careful. Leo points out that his grad school tuition is due in 2 weeks, and his parents paid for fall semester, but there's no way they're paying for spring now. The number on the screen makes my stomach drop, but I start researching student loan options while Leo calls his school's financial aid office. He's on hold for 20 minutes before someone picks up, and he explains his situation, saying his family support has been cut off and he needs to know what options exist. The woman on the phone is sympathetic and tells him to come in tomorrow with documentation of his financial situation. After he hangs up, I'm already pulling up scholarship websites and application forms, bookmarking anything that might apply to his situation. We work through lunch, eating leftover takeout cold from the containers while we fill out forms and gather documents. By late afternoon, my eyes hurt from staring at the screen, but we have a plan, or at least the start of one. Leo leans against me on the couch and says he's scared, but he's also relieved in a weird way because at least now we know where we stand. That evening, someone knocks on our door, and we both freeze because we're not expecting anyone. I look through the peephole and see my younger cousin Yuki standing in the hallway looking nervous. I open the door, and she immediately hugs me hard, her arms tight around my waist. When she pulls back, she says she's proud of me, and I can see she means it. She's always been the rebel in our family, the one who dyed her hair purple and got a tattoo and dated whoever she wanted. She comes inside and sits on our couch and tells us that the whole extended family is talking about my disgraceful behavior, but she thinks I'm brave for choosing love over money. Then she pulls an envelope from her purse and hands it to me, saying it's from her savings, and she wants to help us get through the next few months. I open it and find $5,000 in cash, and I try to give it back, but she refuses. She says she's been saving up to travel, but this is more important, and she won't take no for an answer. Leo thanks her with tears in his eyes, and she hugs him too, telling him he's family now, and family takes care of each other. After Yuki leaves, Leo says he should probably turn his phone back on and face whatever's waiting there. He powers it up, and we watch the notification count climb, 47 missed calls and dozens of texts. Most are from his parents, but there are some from aunts and uncles and cousins too. He scrolls through the texts first, his face getting paler with each one, but it's the voicemail from his mother that makes him go completely white. He plays it on speaker, and his mother's voice comes through high and panicked, saying she's going to report me for kidnapping and coercion, claiming I'm holding her daughter against her will. She says she has proof that this marriage was never legitimate, and she's going to make sure I face legal consequences for what I've done to her child. Leo's hands are shaking when the message ends, and he looks at me with wide, scared eyes. I grab my phone and text Kai, asking if his brother Dimitri can come over tonight because we need legal advice. Kai responds immediately saying Dimitri will be there in an hour. When Dimitri arrives, he's carrying a briefcase and wearing a serious expression. He's a few years older than Kai, already established in his law practice, and he listens to the voicemail twice while taking notes. Then he tells us we need to document everything, save all the messages and voicemails, and consider getting a restraining order if Leo's parents escalate further. He asks Leo questions about the marriage, about whether he entered it willingly and whether he wants to stay in it now, and Leo answers clearly that yes to both. Dimitri nods and says that Leo's an adult, and his parents have no legal right to interfere in his marriage or his life choices. He takes copies of some documents and says he'll start preparing paperwork just in case, and he offers to represent us pro bono if things go further. Leo tries to argue that we can't accept free legal help, but Dimitri waves him off, saying his brother Kai cares about Leo, which means he does too, and that's what matters. The next day, Leo's parents show up at our apartment building, and the doorman calls up to warn us before letting them into the elevator. Leo starts shaking the moment he hears they're coming up, and I can see him trying to pull himself together. When the doorbell rings, he takes a deep breath and opens the door with me standing right behind him. His mother immediately bursts into tears and starts calling him by his dead name, reaching for him and begging him to come home. His father stands silent in the hallway, his face disapproving and cold, while his mother alternates between crying and getting angry. She says I've corrupted her daughter and destroyed their family's reputation, that everyone is talking about them and she can't show her face at church anymore. Leo's hands are trembling, but he keeps them at his sides and doesn't step back. His voice is steady when he speaks, even though I can see the effort it takes. He tells them that he's a man, his name is Leo, and he's staying with his husband who actually loves and respects him for who he is. His mother's face twists, and she spits out that he's delusional, that I'm just using him, that this whole marriage was always fake and everyone knows it. Leo looks at me for a second, and then back at his parents and says, yes, it started as a fake arrangement, but it's real now, and that's more than they ever gave him. The words hit his mother like a slap, and she starts yelling about how ungrateful he is, how much they've sacrificed for him, how he's throwing everything away. His father finally speaks, his voice cold and controlled, and says, they're cutting Leo off completely. No more tuition, no more health insurance, no more family support of any kind. He adds that Leo is no longer welcome at family gatherings, and they'll be telling relatives that their daughter died because the person standing in front of them isn't their child anymore. Leo's face crumples when his father says that, and I see the words hit him harder than anything else. His parents turn and walk back to the elevator without another word, and as soon as the door closes behind them, Leo collapses. I catch him before he hits the floor, and he's sobbing so hard he can barely breathe. I half carry him to the couch and hold him while he cries, his whole body shaking against mine. He says maybe his parents are right, maybe he's being selfish, maybe he should just go back and pretend to be who they want. I pull back so I can look at his face, and I tell him seriously that living a lie almost destroyed both of us, and I won't let him go back to that, even if it means we lose everything. He searches my face for what feels like forever, and I can see him fighting with himself, wanting to believe me, but scared of what it costs. Finally, he nods and wipes his eyes with the back of his hand and says, okay, we'll figure this out together. Over the next few days, we meet with Dimitri at his office to discuss our legal options in detail. He sits us down and explains that Leo's parents can't actually force him to do anything because he's an adult who made his own choices. He says the threats about kidnapping and coercion are empty because there's clear evidence that Leo entered the marriage willingly and has stayed in it of his own free will. Dimitri helps us draft a cease and desist letter requesting that Leo's parents stop harassing us and threatening legal action without basis. He goes over the letter with us line by line, making sure we understand what it says and what it means. Then he tells us that if Leo's parents escalate further, he's willing to represent us pro bono, that he won't charge us for his time or services. Leo immediately feels guilty and tries to argue that we can't accept that kind of help, that it's too much to ask. But Dmitri smiles and says his brother Kai cares about Leo, which means he does too, and sometimes family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up when you need them. The next morning, my phone rings while I'm making coffee, and the name on the screen makes me freeze because it's my father's business partner, the man whose daughter turned out to be Leo. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up, and his voice is quiet when he speaks. He tells me he heard what happened from my father's angry ranting at the office, and he wants me to know he has a gay nephew who went through something similar with his family. He says he understands what I'm going through, and if I need a reference for job applications, he'll provide one no matter what my father thinks. I thank him, and my voice cracks a little because it's such a small thing, but it matters more than he probably knows. That afternoon, Leo gets an email from his grad school financial aid office, and he calls me at work, so excited he can barely get the words out. They came through with a partial scholarship and a work-study position in the library, but when we sit down that night and look at the numbers, there's still a $10,000 gap for spring semester. We spend the entire weekend at our dining table with laptops open, applying for every private scholarship and grant we can find online. Leo picks up 3 tutoring jobs helping undergrads with statistics, and I start seriously looking at job postings and updating my resume. The stress sits heavy in my chest all the time now, but we're handling it together, and that somehow makes it feel less impossible. On Tuesday, I get a call from a tech company asking me to come in for an interview, and I take a half day off from my current job search to meet with them. The hiring manager is a woman in her 40s who looks at my resume and asks detailed questions about my business degree and my experience managing accounts at my father's firm. She seems impressed when I explain the systems I set up and the client relationships I maintained, and at the end of the interview, she offers me a junior analyst position. The pay is less than what I was making before, but it comes with full benefits and room to move up, and I accept right there without even asking for time to think about it. The relief that floods through me is so strong I feel dizzy, because at least now we have stable income and health insurance. That night, Leo and I celebrate with cheap wine from the corner store and Chinese takeout, and we eat sitting on our living room floor because it feels more special somehow than the table. He tells me he's so proud of me for building something that's actually mine, not just handed to me by my father, and his eyes are shining when he says it. We end up talking until 3 in the morning about our real dreams for the future, not the ones our families wanted for us, but the ones we actually want. Leo says he wants to finish his grad degree and become a therapist who works with LGBTQ kids who are going through family rejection, and I realize while he's talking that I actually enjoy business analysis work, and I might be good at it. 2 weeks into my new job, my mother calls me for the first time since everything happened, and her voice sounds strained and tired when she asks if we can meet for coffee. I'm suspicious about what she wants, but I agree, and when I walk into the coffee shop, she looks older than I remember, with new lines around her eyes. She tells me quietly that she doesn't understand my choices, but she's trying, and then she asks if she can meet Leo properly, not as my father's business arrangement, but as my actual spouse. I bring Leo to meet her at a neutral restaurant the following Saturday, and he's so nervous the whole drive there that he keeps picking at his shirt and asking if he looks okay. My mother is awkward at first, and I can see her struggling with pronouns, calling Leo she, and then stopping herself and correcting to he. But she makes a real effort and asks him about his studies and what he's interested in, and by the end of lunch, she's using his name consistently. When we leave, she hugs us both and whispers to me that she'll work on my father, but it will take time, and I nod, because I know that's the best I can hope for right now. Leo's therapist has been helping him deal with his family's rejection, and one session she suggests he might benefit from a support group for trans people dealing with family stuff. He's nervous about going to his first meeting, but he comes home looking lighter somehow, saying it helped to talk to people who actually understand what he's going through. He starts going every week and makes friends there, people who become part of his chosen family to make up for what he lost. My father finds out about my new job somehow and calls my boss directly, trying to wreck things for me by saying I'm not reliable and I stole company secrets when I left his firm. My boss calls me into her office looking serious, and my stomach drops because I think I'm about to lose this job too. Instead, she tells me what my father said, that she checked everything and verified none of it was true, and if he contacts the company again, she'll file harassment charges against him. The stress of everything starts getting to Leo, and he develops bad insomnia, lying awake for hours every night. I notice he's getting thinner, and the dark circles under his eyes keep getting worse, and I finally convince him to see a doctor. The doctor gives him temporary sleep medicine and refers him back to his therapist for more sessions, and I start making all our meals on Sunday, so we have healthy food ready all week. We set up a strict bedtime routine to help him sleep, and slowly, it starts to get better. My cousin calls and invites us to her birthday party, warning us that some extended family will be there, but she wants us to come anyway. We spend a whole evening debating if it's worth the possible drama, but Leo says we can't hide forever, and we might as well face people on our terms. At the party, most relatives avoid us or give us cold looks from across the room, but a few surprise us by being friendly and normal. My aunt pulls me aside near the end of the night and tells me quietly that she thinks my father is being ridiculous, and it's the first time anyone from his generation has said anything supportive. A few weeks after the party, Leo starts his work-study position at the grad school library, and it completely changes his mood. He comes home from his first shift practically glowing and tells me his supervisor is this older woman named Margaret who asked his pronouns right away and has been using them perfectly ever since. The library becomes his safe space where he can just be himself without constantly worrying about someone misgendering him or asking invasive questions. Margaret pulls him aside during his second week and tells him about scholarship opportunities specifically for LGBTQ+ students that he didn't even know existed. She introduces him to two other trans students who work in different departments, and suddenly Leo has friends who actually understand what he's going through. He starts coming home energized instead of exhausted, and I catch myself just watching him sometimes, grateful that he has this one place where people see him for who he really is. My phone buzzes one morning while I'm making coffee, and it's a text from my mother asking how we're doing and if we need anything. I stare at it for a full minute because she's never texted me directly before. Everything always went through my father. Over the next few days, she keeps sending these awkward but sweet messages, sharing recipes she thinks we might like and asking about Leo's classes. She never mentions my father and I don't ask, but I can tell she's trying to build some kind of relationship with me that exists separate from him. Leo notices me reading her messages and encourages me to respond warmly instead of keeping her at arm's length. He says even small connections to family matter, and I realize he's right, even though part of me is still angry at her for not standing up to my father sooner. I start texting her back, short responses at first, but gradually getting more comfortable. She sends me her recipe for soup dumplings, and I actually try making them, burning the first batch, but getting the second one almost right. When I send her a photo, she responds with 3 heart emojis, and I feel something in my chest loosen just a little. Leo finds a flyer on campus about a legal same-sex marriage celebration event happening downtown, and asks if we can go, even though we're technically already married. He says he wants to be around other LGBTQ+ couples and feel normal for once, so I agree, and we dress up and head into the city on Saturday afternoon. The event is at this community center decorated with rainbow flags, and there must be 200 people there, couples of all ages and backgrounds celebrating together. We end up having an amazing time, dancing badly to pop music and laughing until our sides hurt, and eating cake that someone's aunt made. Leo keeps introducing us to people as his husband, and every time he says it, his whole face lights up. On the drive home, he's quiet for a while, and then he says he wants to have a real wedding someday, one where we invite people who actually support us and celebrate what we really are to each other. I reach over and take his hand and tell him we'll do exactly that when we're ready. The good mood lasts about 3 days before everything goes wrong again. I'm at work when my phone rings, and it's Dimitri, which is weird because he usually texts. His voice is tight when he tells me that Leo's parents hired a private investigator who's been following us and taking photos, and now he's been served with papers for a lawsuit. They're claiming I coerced Leo into the marriage and demanding it be annulled, saying I manipulated their daughter for financial gain or some garbage like that. Dimitri sounds furious and says the case has absolutely no merit, but we still have to respond to it, which means more legal fees even though he's not charging us for his time. I feel sick to my stomach thinking about someone watching us, documenting our daily lives like we're criminals. When I get home, Leo is sitting on the couch staring at nothing, and I can tell Dimitri already called him. He looks up at me with these hollow eyes and asks why his parents can't just leave us alone. The stress of the lawsuit hits Leo hard over the next week. He stops sleeping well, and I catch him staring into space during meals, barely eating. His therapist increases their sessions to twice a week, but it doesn't seem to help much. I'm in a meeting when my phone starts buzzing repeatedly, and when I check it, there are 5 missed calls from a number I don't recognize. Then a text comes through from Leo's friend from the library, saying Leo had a panic attack, and they took him to the campus health center. I leave work immediately, not even bothering to make an excuse, just grabbing my keys and running. The health center receptionist directs me to a small room where Leo is sitting on an exam table with a blanket around his shoulders, his face blotchy from crying. He starts apologizing as soon as he sees me, but I cut him off and tell him he has nothing to be sorry for. His parents are the ones who should be ashamed for putting him through this. The nurse gives us some paperwork about anxiety management, and we drive home in silence. That evening, I wrap him in blankets on the couch and read to him from his favorite book, some fantasy novel about dragons, and gradually, he calms down enough to fall asleep against my shoulder. Dmitri calls a few days later and says we need to do practice depositions to prepare for what Leo's parents' lawyer might ask. We meet him at his office on a Saturday, and it's absolutely brutal. He fires questions at us about our relationship history, our living arrangements, our finances, trying to poke holes in our story and prove our feelings are genuine. Leo breaks down crying twice during his practice session, and I have to take several breaks during mine because I'm so angry at his parents for putting us through this. Dmitri keeps his voice gentle but firm, explaining that the opposing lawyer will be much worse, and we need to be prepared. By the end of the 3-hour session, we're both exhausted and emotionally wrung out. Dmitri assures us the case will be dismissed because there's no actual evidence of coercion, but we have to go through the legal process anyway. A former co-worker from my father's company reaches out and asks if we can meet for drinks, which makes me wary, but I agree to meet him at a bar downtown. He orders a beer and then tells me that my father has been increasingly unstable at work since I left, making poor business decisions and yelling at employees over minor mistakes. Several major clients have started taking their business elsewhere because they don't want to deal with his mood swings. He says people at the company are concerned, but no one wants to confront my father directly. My former co-worker clarifies that he's not asking me to come back, but he wanted me to know that my leaving had an impact beyond just our family drama. Part of me feels guilty, but mostly I just feel sad that my father is self-destructing rather than dealing with his issues. I get home and tell Leo about the conversation, and he hugs me and says my father's choices are his own responsibility, not mine. The next morning, Leo is checking his email over breakfast when he suddenly screams so loud I drop my coffee mug. He's staring at his laptop screen with his hands over his mouth, and when I rush over, he points at an email saying he's been awarded a full tuition scholarship for spring semester based on academic merit and financial need. We both start crying and laughing at the same time, and I pick him up and spin him around the kitchen. That night, we go out to a nice restaurant we can actually afford now, and I watch Leo's face as he orders whatever he wants without checking prices first. The relief in his eyes makes my chest tight because I can see how much weight he's been carrying worrying about money and whether he'd be able to finish his degree. Over dessert, he reaches across the table and takes my hand and thanks me for believing in him, even when his own parents didn't. We decide it's time to start couples counseling because even though we love each other, we're both dealing with family rejection and trauma, and we want to build healthy patterns together instead of just surviving. Our therapist is this woman in her 50s who specializes in LGBTQ+ couples and family estrangement issues. She asks us questions about our communication styles and our fears and what we need from each other. Leo admits quietly that he sometimes worries I'll regret choosing him over my family, that I'll wake up one day and realize I gave up too much. I look directly at him and tell him clearly that he is my family now, that choosing him wasn't giving something up, but gaining everything that actually matters. The therapist nods approvingly and says that kind of certainty is what we need to hold on to when things get hard. The next week, I'm at my desk working when the receptionist calls and says there's someone in the lobby asking for me. I head down and freeze when I see my father standing there looking agitated. Before I can say anything, he starts yelling about how I've ruined the family name and destroyed his business relationships. Security shows up within 30 seconds, and 2 guards escort him out while he's still shouting. My boss appears at my elbow and tells me to take the rest of the day off, that she's filing a formal trespassing notice against him so he can't come back. I'm completely humiliated that my co-workers witnessed that scene, but several of them message me later saying their parents are difficult too, and they respect how I handled the situation. When I get home, Leo takes one look at my face and pulls me into a hug without asking questions, and we just stand there in the kitchen holding each other while I try to process what happened. 3 weeks later, Dmitri calls while we're eating breakfast, and Leo nearly drops his coffee when he hears Dmitri's voice saying the judge dismissed the lawsuit. Leo grabs my hand across the table, and I can see tears starting in his eyes as Dmitri explains that the judge ruled there's no evidence of force, and Leo is an adult who can make his own choices. When Leo hangs up, he's crying and laughing at the same time, and I pull him into my lap and just hold him while he shakes with relief. That night, we sleep better than we have in weeks, curled up together without the weight of the lawsuit hanging over us. Though Dmitri warned us Leo's parents could try other things, but this was their best shot, and it failed. A few days later, my mother texts asking if we can come to her book club meeting on Saturday, which is weird because she's never invited me to anything like that before. We show up at the address she gave us, and it's not a bookstore or someone's house, but a community center, and when we walk into the room, there are about 15 people sitting in a circle with a rainbow flag on the wall. My mother sees us and waves us over, and that's when I realize this isn't a book club at all, but a support group for parents of LGBTQ kids. She introduces us to the other parents, and several of them have trans children, and they ask Leo questions about his experience and what helped him and what made things harder. Leo talks for almost an hour about his journey and coming out and dealing with his parents' rejection, and I watch these parents listening carefully and taking notes like they really want to understand. On the drive home, Leo is quiet for a while, and then he says, "My mother is really trying, actually putting in work to understand, instead of just saying, she's okay with it, and maybe there's hope for more family healing down the road." That conversation gets us thinking about our own relationship and how we never got to have a real wedding, just the fake one our families arranged, and Leo says quietly that he wishes we could do it over and mean it this time. I tell him we can have a commitment ceremony, something just for us with people who actually support us, and his face lights up like I've given him the best gift ever. We start planning it for a Saturday afternoon at this botanical garden across town, and Kai and Yuki jump in to help us organize everything from flowers to food to chairs. One night we're sitting at the kitchen table trying to write our vows, and Leo keeps starting and stopping, getting emotional every time he tries to put his feelings into words. I reach over and take his hand and tell him we have time, we don't have to rush this, and he nods and wipes his eyes and says he just wants to get it right, because this time, it matters. Watching him work so hard on his vows makes me realize we're both getting the wedding we actually wanted all along, one where we choose each other for real, instead of being forced together by family pressure. The day of the ceremony arrives, and it's perfect, small and intimate, with about 20 people who genuinely love us. Leo wears this suit he picked out himself, navy blue with a crisp white shirt, and he looks so handsome and confident that I can barely breathe when I see him. I'm wearing traditional formal clothes, but in a style that feels right for me, not the costume my father would have picked. When we exchange our new rings, simple matching bands we chose together, everyone cheers and claps. Leo leans in to kiss me and whispers that this is the first time he's felt truly married, like we're really husbands instead of just playing parts. My mother is there crying through the whole thing, and afterward she hugs Leo tight and calls him her son-in-law, using the right words without anyone having to correct her. A week after the ceremony, Leo comes home from the school looking stunned, and when I ask what's wrong, he says his advisor pulled him aside after class. She told him about a research assistant position that just opened up, working on a study about LGBTQ mental health, and she wants him for the job because she's been so impressed with his work. The position comes with extra funding and will look amazing on his resume for future opportunities. Leo accepted right there in her office, and now he's so excited he can barely get the words out as he tells me about the research and what he'll be doing. I'm thrilled to see him building a career he actually cares about, something that matters to him, instead of just checking boxes to please his parents. Around the same time, we start going to this LGBTQ Asian American community group that meets once a month at a local center. Walking into that first meeting and seeing other people who get both parts of our identity, the cultural stuff and the queer stuff, feels incredible. We make friends with other couples who are dealing with family rejection and complicated relationships with their parents. After a few meetings, we start hosting game nights at our apartment, and Leo becomes more outgoing and confident than I've ever seen him, laughing and joking with our new friends, like he's finally comfortable in his own skin. One afternoon, my father's business partner calls me, and my stomach drops, because I haven't heard from him in months. He tells me my father had a minor heart attack last week, and the doctors are making him slow down at work. He asks carefully if I'd be willing to see my father, not to fix everything necessarily, but just to talk. I tell him I need to think about it and discuss it with Leo and my therapist. That night, Leo and I talk it through, and he says he'll support whatever I decide, but I should consider it, because even difficult parents are still parents. My therapist agrees that I can set clear boundaries and meet my father in a neutral place without compromising myself. I call the business partner back and say I'll meet my father for coffee at a restaurant downtown, somewhere public where neither of us can make a scene. The meeting is tense from the start, my father sitting stiff and formal across from me, and he doesn't apologize for anything he said or did, but he admits that cutting me off completely was harsh, and he's been thinking about getting older and dying, and not wanting to be estranged from his only son when that happens. I tell him straight out that I appreciate him reaching out, but if he wants any kind of relationship with me, he needs to accept Leo as my husband and treat him with respect. My father doesn't agree right away, doesn't say yes or no, just nods slowly, like he's thinking about it. It's not the reconciliation I might have hoped for, but it's more progress than I expected, and I leave the restaurant feeling like maybe something could eventually change. Leo finishes his fall semester a few weeks later with excellent grades, despite everything we've been through, and his professors write him strong letters of recommendation for future programs. He's starting to see a real path forward in his career that doesn't depend on his parents' money or approval. We celebrate by taking a weekend trip to a beach town a few hours away, our first real vacation together as an actual couple. We walk on the beach holding hands and eat at little restaurants and stay in a cheap motel, and it's simple but perfect because we're doing it for ourselves. When we get back, Yuki calls and asks if we can meet her for lunch because she has big news. At the restaurant, she's practically bouncing in her seat, and she tells us she got engaged to her girlfriend and she wants us to be in the wedding party. She says watching us stand up to our families and choose each other inspired her to stop hiding her own relationship. Her parents are surprisingly okay with it, and Yuki thinks it's partly because they saw how badly my father's rejection damaged our whole family. At Yuki's engagement party a month later, several relatives who were cold to us before are suddenly friendlier, asking how we're doing and making small talk like nothing ever happened. I realize that having allies in the family, people like Yuki who are openly on our side, makes a huge difference in how others treat us. A few weeks after Yuki's party, my boss calls me into her office, and I assume it's about the quarterly reports I just submitted. She closes the door and tells me the company is promoting me to senior analyst with a big raise and expanded responsibilities. She says she sees real leadership potential in me and wants to put me on the fast track for management roles. I walk out of her office feeling like I'm floating, because this is something I earned myself, not handed to me by my father's connections. That night, Leo and I sit at the kitchen table with our laptops open, looking at houses we could afford in a few years with my new salary. We talk about having a yard and space for Leo's books, and maybe getting a dog, and it hits me that we're planning a real future together, not just surviving month to month. Leo reaches across the table and squeezes my hand and says he's proud of me for building something on my own. The next week, a thick envelope arrives from a law office I don't recognize, and when I open it, there's a formal letter from Leo's parents' attorney requesting a meeting to discuss family matters. Leo goes pale when he reads it and immediately texts Dimitri, who tells us not to respond until he reviews it. Dimitri comes over that evening and reads through everything carefully, then says, "It seems like they want to talk, but we should only agree if he's present as our representation." We schedule the meeting for the following Tuesday at Dimitri's office, neutral territory where Leo's parents can't try to control the situation. Leo barely sleeps the night before, tossing and turning next to me, and I hold him close and promise I'll be right there with him no matter what happens. The meeting is awkward from the start, Leo's parents sitting stiff and formal across the conference table while Dimitri takes notes. His father doesn't say much, just nods occasionally, but his mother does most of the talking in this tight, controlled voice. She says she's been thinking about things since she saw photos from Yuki's engagement party, pictures of us looking happy together and Leo looking confident and healthy. She admits she's been questioning whether she made the right choices, whether pushing Leo away was what she really wanted. She doesn't apologize for anything she said or did, doesn't accept Leo's identity or use the right pronouns, but she says if Leo is willing, she'd like to try having some kind of relationship. Leo sits frozen next to me, his hand gripping mine under the table so hard my fingers go numb. Dimitri asks what kind of relationship they're envisioning and what boundaries they're willing to respect, and Leo's mother hesitates before saying she's willing to try, which is the most progress we've gotten from her. Over the next few days, Leo thinks carefully about his parents' offer, talking it through with his therapist, and with me late at night in bed. He decides he's willing to try limited contact, but only with clear boundaries, that if they use his dead name or wrong pronouns, the conversation ends immediately. His first phone call with his mother lasts maybe 10 minutes and is painfully awkward, with long silences and stilted small talk about school and weather. She slips up on pronouns twice but catches herself and corrects it, which Leo tells me afterward is more than he expected from her. He's cautiously hopeful, but realistic, saying full acceptance might never come, but having any relationship is better than nothing. A month later, we attend a big trans rights rally downtown that one of Leo's support group friends organized. Leo agreed weeks ago to give a short speech about his experience with family rejection and finding chosen family, and he's nervous the whole morning, practicing his talking points and asking me if his shirt looks okay. We get to the rally, and there are hundreds of people holding signs and chanting, and when it's Leo's turn to speak, he climbs up on the small stage, and his voice shakes at first, but gets stronger. He talks about growing up feeling wrong in his own skin, about parents who couldn't see him for who he really was, about finding people who loved him anyway. I stand in the crowd watching him speak so confidently to all these strangers, and I feel this overwhelming surge of pride and love that makes my chest tight. After his speech, several young trans people come up to thank him, saying his story gave them hope that things could get better. Leo's eyes are bright when we walk back to the car, and he says he never realized his painful experiences could actually help other people, that maybe going through all that wasn't completely pointless. My mother calls a few days later and asks if she can take us out to dinner to celebrate my promotion, and I'm suspicious because she's never done anything like that before. We meet her at a nice restaurant downtown and she's nervous, fidgeting with her napkin and ordering wine she doesn't drink. Halfway through the meal, she takes a deep breath and tells us she's been going to therapy for the past few months, working through her internalized homophobia and all the traditional beliefs she grew up with. She looks directly at Leo and says she's sorry for not protecting him from my father's cruelty earlier, for standing by and letting those awful things happen. She says she wants to build a real relationship with him, to get to know him as her son-in-law instead of just tolerating him. Leo's eyes fill with tears, and he thanks her quietly, and I realize my mother is actually braver than I ever gave her credit for, willing to challenge everything she was taught and change at her age. We start looking for a bigger apartment in a more LGBTQ-friendly neighborhood where we won't have to worry about judgmental neighbors or hostile looks. We find a great 2-bedroom place with lots of windows and space for both of us to have proper work areas. Moving day is chaos with boxes everywhere and furniture that doesn't fit through doorways, but Kai and Dimitri come over to help, and we get everything set up. Leo claims the second bedroom as his home office for his research work and fills it with his books and papers, and I set up a real workspace in the corner of the living room with a proper desk and filing system. The apartment feels like ours in a way our old place never did, decorated with things we chose together and photos from our commitment ceremony on the walls. Leo hangs a small rainbow pride flag in the window facing the street, and neither of us worries about what anyone thinks, and that freedom feels incredible. 3 months later, Leo gets an email that makes him literally jump up and down in the kitchen. He's been accepted to present his research at a national conference on LGBTQ mental health, and they're covering his travel and accommodation. I immediately request time off work, so I can go with him and watch his presentation, and my boss approves it without hesitation. The conference is in Chicago, and Leo is nervous the whole flight there, going over his notes and practicing his presentation. When it's his turn to present, he's brilliant, explaining his research on family rejection and mental health outcomes in trans youth with confidence and clarity. Other researchers come up afterward to talk with him, impressed with his work and asking about potential collaboration on future projects. On the flight home, Leo tells me he's thinking about pursuing a PhD after he finishes his master's degree, and I encourage him to go for it because I can see how passionate he is about this work. My father reaches out directly for the first time in months, calling my cell phone and leaving a voicemail asking if he can meet both of us for lunch. I listen to the message 3 times trying to figure out his angle before I call him back and agree to meet at a restaurant near his office. The lunch is uncomfortable, my father sitting across from us looking older and tired. He makes an effort to be polite to Leo, using his name correctly and asking basic questions about his studies and research. He tells me he's proud of how I've built a career on my own without relying on family connections, which is the closest he's come to admitting he was wrong to cut me off. It's not a full apology or reconciliation, but it's something, and Leo squeezes my hand under the table in support. We decide to host Thanksgiving at our new apartment and invite our chosen family and the relatives who support us. My mother comes early to help with cooking, and Yuki arrives with her fiancé bringing wine and desserts. Kai and Dimitri show up with a huge turkey they insisted on providing, and several friends from our community groups bring side dishes. Leo spends all morning cooking traditional dishes from his family's recipes, reclaiming parts of his culture on his own terms. When everyone is seated around our table, packed in close with extra chairs borrowed from neighbors, I look around at all these people who love us for who we actually are and feel more grateful than I ever have in my life. We go around the table saying what we're thankful for, and when it's my turn, I say, I'm thankful for Leo and for everyone here who chose to be our family. On Leo's birthday, a few weeks later, his phone rings in the morning, and he checks the caller ID and goes still. It's his mother calling, and he answers cautiously, his whole body tense. I watch his face change as he listens, going from guarded to shocked to emotional. She's wishing him happy birthday and using his correct name, her voice awkward but genuine. Then she asks if she can send him a gift, and he agrees, too surprised to say much else. 3 days later, a package arrives, and Leo opens it with shaking hands. Inside is a nice men's watch with an engraving on the back that says, "To our son, Leo." Leo reads it and starts crying, really crying, and he calls his mother back immediately to thank her. They talk for almost an hour, the longest conversation they've had since everything happened, and when he hangs up, he tells me it's a small gesture, but it represents huge growth from her. He lets himself hope that maybe more healing is possible, that maybe his parents might actually come around someday. 6 months later, my boss calls me into her office, and I think I'm in trouble until she tells me they're creating a new management position, and they want me for it. The role puts me on track for director level within a few years, and the salary is almost double what I'm making now. I accept immediately, because this is mine, something I built without my father's name or money or connections. When I get home, Leo is cooking dinner, and I tell him about the promotion, and he drops the spatula and hugs me, so hard I can barely breathe. He prints out my official promotion announcement the next day and buys a nice frame for it and hangs it in our home office right above my desk. He stands back looking at it with this proud smile and says, "I'm becoming the person I was always meant to be, not the version my father wanted." "We both are," he adds, and he's right, because neither of us is pretending anymore. Yuki's wedding happens on a perfect spring afternoon, and the whole extended family shows up, including my parents. Leo and I dance together at the reception, and I catch my father watching us from across the room with this complicated expression on his face. After the dance ends, my father walks over, and I tense up, preparing for something awful, but instead, he looks at Leo and tells him that he can see Leo makes me happy, and that matters to him now. It's not an apology for years of cruelty, and it doesn't erase everything he said and did, but he holds out his hand and calls Leo by his actual name. Leo shakes his hand and thanks him graciously, even though I know how much my father's acceptance still costs him. My mother cries watching this and hugs both of us afterward. Leo finishes his master's degree with honors and gets multiple acceptance letters for PhD programs, but he chooses the one with full funding at a school known for LGBTQ research. We celebrate by booking a 2-week trip to Japan that we pay for entirely ourselves without any family money. On the plane, Leo goes through the itinerary he planned, temples and gardens and museums, places he's always wanted to see. In Kyoto, we walk through bamboo forests and old temple grounds, and Leo talks about how he finally feels comfortable in his own skin, how he's not performing for anyone's expectations anymore. At a garden in Tokyo, I tell him I love him more than I thought it was possible to love anyone, and he stops walking and looks at me and says he feels exactly the same way. We take pictures together and eat amazing food and stay up late talking about his research plans and my career goals and the life we're building together. 2 years after that day when I chased him through the airport, we're sitting on our balcony watching the sun set over the city. Leo leans against me and says he's glad I caught him before he got on that plane, that he doesn't want to imagine what his life would be like if I hadn't. I pull him closer and tell him I would have followed him anywhere, to the other side of the world if that's what it took, because he's my person and I'm his. We've built something completely ours now, full of friends who chose to be our family and love that's real and honest. Our apartment is filled with photos from our commitment ceremony and our Japan trip, and random moments that matter to us. Leo's research is going well, and my career keeps advancing, and we have dinner with my mother every few weeks, and occasional awkward lunches with my father. It's messy and complicated, and nothing like what either of our families planned for us, but neither of us would change a single thing about how we got here.